This show is obviously called Locked On Wolverines, which means we cover the University of Michigan and the sports therein. However, this episode is not for the Michigan fans out there. I mean, it is. But considering yet again, I saw, because listen, we don't live in, in just cones of silence. I do have access to the internet, and algorithms push things out to me without me searching for them. This is for the Buckeye fans that want to complain about the contents of the show, particularly yesterday. So when I look at this, I say the fact that you are complaining about this tells me once again you are the softest fan base in the history of the planet. Let's talk about it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Wohl, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I find it really funny. So a lot of you aren't going to know this, but there was a clip circulating that it was from yesterday's show where I said that I don't believe that this is, I think that this is the worst Ohio State team in a while, right? And I have reasons for believing that. But you take it a little bit out of context. You take out the praise that I gave you, Ohio State fans, at the beginning. So how soft do you have to have to take something out of context? I know a lot of you just see the clip on the internet and you're like, this jerk, and all of that. I want to preface this by saying sports are supposed to be fun. This is just a sports rivalry. I'm gonna jab at you a tiny bit, but anyone who comes to me, with respect and a humble heart, I love you. I would give you the shirt off my back. I don't care what team you root for. I don't hate you, Ohio State fans. I don't hate Ohio State players at all. In fact, I've had contact with current Ohio State players during this actual season, and it is more than cordial. It is friendly because we are acquaintances. So I say all that to be like, y'all soft, right? Like, if this is what you're getting upset about, me saying that your team is not necessarily the best team that you've had in some time, that speaks in part to just the nature of college football, number one. I'm not saying that you're not going to win the national championship. I've even gone on to say that I think that there is a more than puncher's chance that you can. Do I expect Michigan to win on Saturday? And again, Michigan fans, earmuffs. No, I don't expect Michigan to win. That said, there's always a path, and we have to talk about what that path might be instead of just writing it off writ large, essentially. But the fact that you are so upset over this, like you sit there and you look at Will Howard and you look at this offensive line, you look at the tight end, you look at all the skill position players, like Jeremiah Smith is an absolute beast, and Michigan's going to have a hard time containing him. Yet, he's not Marvin Harrison from last year. Why did I say last year's offense with Kyle McCord? Okay, was Will Howard better than Kyle McCord? Yeah, I'd say so. I'm not saying that Will Howard is worse than Kyle McCord, but the sum of all parts last year offensively, I think, despite not having Quinshon Judkins, but you still had Travion Henderson, but you had Marvin Harrison, who was the best wide receiver in college football, in my opinion. That changes a lot of the calculus, right? To not have him, and Jeremiah Smith very well might be the best wide receiver in college football as soon as next year, but there's still a little bit, like you just got to kind of get through some of the things. And if you're going to tell me you're going to take the offense this year compared to 20, 21, 22, I mean, I'll go back to 19, heck, even 18. They felt like better teams overall that stumbled. Okay. And you stumbled at Oregon, right? Like, if this is the best team you've got, you still lost at Oregon in a game that Oregon should have scored more than it did, right? Yeah, you had a chance, but the first drive, you got a phantom catch there that should have been overturned, right? Like, but there was no challenge. There were a couple mistakes that Oregon made. That game very well could have been more like 42-31 or 45-31, something of that nature. I put that a little bit more mixed between Oregon messing up and Ohio State making plays, because you still have to have that part too. But Oregon still won that game. So why do I want to do a whole segment on this? It's just because the fact that, number one, Michigan fans love hearing how soft you are, right? Like just the whole thing that happened in 2021. I remember I wrote an article for 11 Warriors, or at least it was like answering their questions, right? And in it, I was like, I fully expect Ohio State to win, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And all of the comments were people that were just like freaking out and being like, this idiot, this drivel, I was going to say drivelist. That's a word I just made up. This person that is just engaging in drivel for the sake of homerism. And yet I knew the reason why was because Ohio State didn't have Michigan's signs, that was going to kind of change a little bit of what the game was. And yet you cried about it and acted as if it was the dumbest kind of commentary that could possibly exist. And yet I was 100% right. With all the Connor Stallion stuff, you know, this idiot saying all the kinds of stuff. Turns out I knew exactly what I was talking about. Yet y'all love to say, you know, the Michigan insiders were incorrect every step of the way. And I urge you to kind of go into that. Now, there's something that people like to use to malign me. I'm not going to engage with that. You don't know what's going on. I stated something inarticulately, but you know, it's just absolutely absurd how you as a fan base, Ohio State fans are. Now, Michigan fans, I like to complain about you sometimes, right? There's some moments. There's a reason why we've had a little bit of argument here and there throughout the Connor stuff or the Bryce Underwood stuff and all of that. But you know I love you, right? You know that I love you because what I've always loved is the camaraderie, and it's a little bit of a different scenario with Michigan because it doesn't have the whole state to itself. It's been, battered and beaten at times, which sometimes informs the psychology of this fan base. But there's a reason why I love you. The arrogance that once existed, the Michigan arrogance, it's in a lot of ways become a Michigan humility. Michigan fans know going into this game that it's going to be a very difficult challenge, and you embrace the challenge and you say, hey, if this is the year that we're going to lose it after 3 in a row, given everything that we've been able to sustain and love about the last 3 years, then so be it. Obviously, there's a lot of Michigan fans that also feel like take no quarter or prisoner and just find a way to win this game again. But Ohio State fans, you just need to come in grips with reality. The world does not center around you, number one. Number two, you can sit there and scream how tough you are and everything. But if the opinion of me saying that I don't think this is the best Ohio State team, that actually is me saying that Ohio State's had some really good teams. Michigan beat some really good teams in 21, 22, and 23. I'm not out here saying like y'all were terrible and that's why Michigan won. No, I'm saying Michigan beat some really good teams those 3 seasons. Yet you complain and you whine and you cry, and I would love nothing more as a result of the way that you are treating me, your humble host, personally, than to see you go down for a 4th year in a row. So that's for you, Ohio State fans. And trust me, I've dealt with it all my life. My family and on my dad's side are Ohio State fans, as I've said before. My dad being the only exception because I just think he's apolitical when it comes to college football. I think he's more of an NBA guy, right? That's how that kind of goes for him. So, all right, we talked a little bit about keys for the game. Yesterday, let's kind of continue that. What does the perfect game plan look like for Michigan? What are some of the challenges Ohio State is going to pose for the Wolverines? Let's talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, you're going to want to get into some live events. They've got all kinds of things coming up. Obviously, we got two more football games. At the college level, you got pro football, NBA, and college basketball just started up. So you're going to want to get in the door. And Gametime, with their new feature, Gametime Picks, makes it that much easier to get in to see your favorite teams play live. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With their curated deals, their super deals, seat views before you buy, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. It makes the entire experience so well worth it compared to anyone else out there. Gametime Picks, like I said, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, and theater. That's because it runs the whole gamut. right? It's not just those live sports. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. I've said this before when it comes to doing this for a living, of which many Ohio State fans have questioned suddenly. Like, how can someone like me do this for a living, that I'm terrible and everything? Well, I'm doing it for a living, okay? But it's afforded me the ability to buy a house and live my life. And you know what? Like, I don't wish any ill will towards anyone, seriously. You know, and I extend that to to the, Zach Smith, I don't think likes me very much, right? Like anyone out there in the Ohio State sphere. Listen, I live by my values, and my values also dictate that I hope that, and I know this draws the ire of people. I'm going to say it anyway. I hope that you find Jesus and that you live a healthy, prosperous life of kindness and love. That goes for anyone out there. If you're an Ohio State fan, Michigan State fan, Michigan fan. But it's funny because the things that bother me are not Ohio State fans coming after me or Ohio State media or anything like that. It's more the Michigan fans, right? Because like, I'm here for y'all. I've talked about that before. I'm here for y'all. I don't care about the Ohio State fans, right? Like, it's kind of like just kind of the nature of the business is that the rival fans are going to come after you and act like you're a bad person because you don't like their team. And I know some in media that believe that, but I wouldn't say the same for a lot of your media. Like I've said before, I love Dave Biddle and Steve Hellwagon. They were ex-coworkers of mine at 24/7 Sports. Pat Murphy, Dan Hope. Those are some people that I absolutely love when I get an opportunity to see them on any given basis. That's not saying that there aren't bad apples in any media sphere. There is. Right now, the Michigan media is actually pretty great. But nonetheless. All right. So I dig at you because it's fun and because I don't care what you think of me. All right, let's get into what Michigan's game plan should be and some of the potential pitfalls that could befall Michigan. My biggest concern really going into the game is obviously the Michigan offense versus the Ohio State defense. Now, the Ohio State defense going up against Oregon got shredded, but it did a really good job against Indiana. But Indiana also couldn't do much against Michigan. So maybe, some of that was a paper tiger. It's hard to really tell. But that is still definitely my concern. And that much more, it's my concern that Jim Knowles is going to be able to deploy basically the same game plan he did in 2022 against a Michigan front that is not going to be able to really take advantage of it, and a quarterback that's not going to be able to take advantage of it, right? So he was more in that like cover 1, cover 0 type stuff, right? And obviously that hurt them when it came to JJ making first the underneath pass to Cornelius, made the missed tackle and then the long touchdown, and then they said the kid couldn't throw the deep ball play. That certainly helped Michigan by taking a lead that they surrendered but then got back, right? I don't foresee that Michigan's necessarily going to be able to sustain drives in the same way it did in that 2022 game. It's going to be really difficult being on the road. So Michigan really needs to be aware and hopefully has some things in its arsenal. Like they can sit there and say to us all day long, like, we can pass through the air and all this stuff. And certainly they've been trying to, but they have not really hit like a true deep shot all season long, right? The Colston Loveland catch at Illinois just shy of the goal line was the only time that we've really seen like that type of play. I feel like they're going to need that to force Ohio State to back off, and they probably still won't because they'll say, okay, you hit it once, are you going to hit it again in order to get the run game kind of going? This is the type of game, I don't remember what I said yesterday, so we're just going to pretend like any of that didn't happen. If I'm Michigan, I'm pulling out all the stops. I'm pretty sure I talked about that yesterday. Like I'm running flea flickers, I'm running jet sweeps, I'm running running back passes, I'm running all that kind of stuff, right? I'm doing everything in my power to catch them off guard and take advantage. And I think that, having a flea flicker type play could be a really good job, a really good, not job, but really good type of play that would help Michigan clear out the space so that they can throw that deep ball and maybe not have someone, have someone bite and not be in coverage. Sharon Moore seemed pretty confident that Colston Loveland probably will be back this next week, so we'll see. And Will Johnson kind of feels like he's not, right? So that's a problem on one side and a benefit on the other. But you really need to see some of these guys, like we've seen Tyler Morris kind of come alive. Frederick Moore getting in space. It's like, okay, well, we saw it in the spring game, and then you see it this last week. That's good. I think it helps for Michigan to have the confidence that it has, right? Because none of these players have lost to Ohio State, and no one on this Ohio State roster has lost to Michigan. They do have someone who was on Michigan's roster in Joey Velasquez. But you hope that if things can get tight or stay tight, then that's going to work in Michigan's favor to some degree, because those players can draw on experience, maybe not from this year, but they can dig deep into last year, and that's where you hope that you see some leadership coming in, and maybe some of those elder statesmen come out and really kind of take control, right? Like the Colston Lovelands, the Donovan Edwards. You're going to need to see some big plays from Donovan and Kalel, obviously, and obviously some smart play calling from Kirk Campbell, which we've seen kind of intermittently. So I am really curious to see kind of how this goes in terms of that. But I am very concerned because the Michigan offensive line is worse than the Ohio State offensive line. But I don't think it's as much of a mismatch with their line, because their line does get pressure. It's a different deal. Again, Ohio State fans, you're going to get mad, but it's the number one pass rush in the country according to PFF. I'm not making that up, right? So, can Michigan do it? Yeah, I mean, Michigan's kept things kind of tight in some games that it had, I shouldn't say no business, because they've lost games that they had no business losing this year, but. Obviously, that Oregon game was much closer near the end than I would have thought. Driving could have been down a touchdown with about 7 minutes left, and it just kind of got away from them there at the end there. Michigan's going to need to be able to capitalize on moments like that, and that's the importance of starting fast, because Ohio State, and this is another one of the reasons why it's like these past Ohio State teams. Why do I talk about that? Because it generally felt, when they weren't playing Michigan a lot of these last couple of years. Last year, I can understand, okay, if you want to say, well, it wasn't as good. The defense was very good, they thought. But the offense took a while to get going, right? They beat Indiana 13-3, and it didn't feel like that was a great team. But at the same time, generally in many of these other years, it was especially C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields. I mean, Dwayne Haskins, just keep going back, right? Because they were falling upwards for a long time at the quarterback position. It felt like you blink, you turn on the game, you blink, and they're up 30-0, right? That's not really been what the case of this year's team, because they've just generally taken a little bit of time to get going. Michigan needs to take advantage of that, because what really hurt Michigan so far this year, a game against Texas, a game against Oregon, was allowing those teams to really get out to fast starts and putting Michigan behind the 8 ball. It needs to look a lot more like the first half against USC and Minnesota. I don't think it will, right? They were up pretty big in both of those at halftime. But nonetheless, I think that that's going to be the important thing, is getting out to a fast start and then withstanding anything that comes their way, right? All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet, rather. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're going to continue on with the preview footage here, kind of. I was planning on saving this more for later down the road, but kind of didn't expect to kind of wrap up everything that I wanted to talk about in 20 minutes. So bonus footage, essentially. Sometimes you got to improvise, and that's where we're at today because I've already kind of gone through my notes. All right, so what do I think will happen in this game? And I think that, they've subverted expectations and everything like that. But I do think that Michigan offensively is going to look sharper. And I think Davis Warren is going to kind of be surprising. I mean, you've seen that he can make the throws. He can often go through the reads, not always, but sometimes he's still missed. Like, this has been an issue all season long. You see these quarterbacks just missing wide open receivers. I think that you've seen the Ohio State cornerbacks sometimes struggle. Caleb Downs has been phenomenal. Lathan Ransom came back not too long ago. I don't know what week he came back, but I saw him making plays against Indiana. And so you just kind of hope that it's that the nerves kind of affect Ohio State to some degree, because that's one of the things that Davis Warren was talking about is yesterday, is just that you don't want to get too high, you don't want to get too low, right? Like, it's this idea of like you have to be emotionally kind of centered going into a game like this. And I think that's absolutely important, right? Like, you got to play like your hair's on fire and leave it all out there, but not do too much, not get too high, not get too low, and just kind of fight every down. And that was exactly the type of thing that Davis Warren said. So I'm very curious and interested to see kind of how that looks. I'm still not confident that the play calling is going to be to anyone's liking. And obviously, if they lose, it won't be to anyone's liking. If they win, it will be to everyone's liking. It's just kind of how it goes. Chances of it being like, I really liked the offensive play calling and they lost would obviously mean that the defense let them down. And the chances of liking both play callers in a loss is probably nil. So that said, I mean, we've seen stellar Wink Martindale recently. It always takes people a little bit of time to catch up, but obviously, not allowing a touchdown in 6 quarters, doing what they were able to do against Indiana, kind of writ large there. I don't know. I'm probably using that wrong. It's like an autistic tick right now, just to say something. But I think that there's I think that, like, we've seen a lot of good from Wink, and I would imagine Wink's really been watching Ryan Day. And obviously, Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator, he's been in the NFL. He's gone. I'm going to have to look this up. Has he faced a Wink Martindale defense? I would bet he has. Didn't go well for Sark in the NFL. Went great for Sark in college. But I think that Wink had to learn some lessons about college, and I think he's mostly learned them. So I'm curious to see how he deploys things. But I don't know yet about Kirk Campbell. Called a much better game last week than we've seen him do yet, right? That was obviously his best as the Michigan offensive coordinator. Not many notes there, except for maybe just like we're seeing, Khalil and Donovan kind of a little bit later than maybe, and Davis Warren maybe a little bit later than we would have hoped. But I'm curious to see, because there's always the chance, right? There's always the chance that there's some kind of fault line that the one of the teams doesn't see, right? Like it obviously Michigan 2018, 2019 mixture of the crossing routes, Don Brown's play calling, like those were massive issues. So could that go the other way? Could there be something that Sharon Moore sees that these guys see and say, we think we can exploit this? I think one of the issues that Michigan's coaching staff has had at times this year is that find something that works and then they do something different, right? Because they're just trying to be diverse in all of these things. I would like to see them just kind of do what Urban Meyer's teams used to do, both at Florida and at Ohio State, was like, we're going to run this. You're not going to be able to stop it. And we're just going to keep doing it because there's nothing you can do about it. And I'd really like to see that happen. Now, we're going to have to embrace the fact that it's going to take Michigan probably. I wouldn't be surprised if they march down the field on the opening drive and score. They tend to do that against Ohio State, but not always. They didn't in 2022. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. And then the kind of similar lull that we've seen in, last year's national championship game, the majority of the Big Ten championship game, and really any of the 3 Big Ten championship games, just big lulls of offensive lack. The Rose Bowl, I mean, just you can kind of name it. There was a lot of that. Obviously, this is going to be one of the better defenses that Michigan's seen all year, if not the best. But it usually is, and the offense usually tends to find a way to move the ball. So I'm going to be very curious to see how much we're gonna come out of it and see like, well, they've been preparing for this all year and we just didn't see it because they needed to save it for this game because it's that important. But on the other side, same thing could be true, but I kind of doubt it to some degree because if I'm Ohio State, I don't really want to get away from my identity, right? Because I think that's been kind of part of the problem, right? They didn't lose in 2021 because they couldn't throw the ball all over. They were able to, but Michigan was just able to, get off the field on third downs. That's where I'm really curious to see. Getting Will Howard down on the ground is going to be absolutely crucial for this Michigan front. I think they're going to flush him, but you got to get him down. Don't let him keep his eyes downfield because that's when, you're going to be, you certainly don't have the secondary you thought you did going into the season. Or I should say in the spring, right? Like no Rod Moore, probably no Will Johnson. That just kind of changes things, right? Yeah. That's all I got. That's all I got for today. We'll be back Wednesday. We're going to go, I think at least, the plan I think is to go all week here. Friday might be a little dicey, just to be honest, with the travel, especially it's a last time I went down there coming from Ann Arbor, it was like a 3-hour drive. Now it's a 4. If I go to the Fox set and all of that, it's just that the timing might make it a little difficult. But if that's the case, we'll try to make up for it with a late post game from once we get back. Okay, so that's the plan. We will do Thanksgiving. Friday might be dicey. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. Peace.